Kevin, you were just explaining kind of like how you read the marketplace and kind of how you feel out your next moves in this game of chess that we're playing here on the oil field. You want to jump back into that?
Yeah. So I would say for much of my career, which now is 24 years long in this space and going, I just sort of stumble into these things, right? So I have an interest, I start going down the rabbit hole of something, and then I have a desire to deconstruct something. I try something and figure it out and it starts working, and then other people want it, right? Or I have some sort of hidden knowledge that other people don't have and people want it. Like that's how the Hustler's Secret came about. It was accidental. I was playing golf with a buddy and told him that if you put Vaseline on the club, actually I didn't tell him, I showed him, I went and got some Vaseline and we put it on his club, and he had the round of his life, the lowest score he had ever shot by 4 shots. So that night or that afternoon, we were in the clubhouse having a beer, and he's like, man, I would have paid to know this years ago. You should sell it like you do your other stuff. And I just came home and said, you know what, maybe he's right. Let me write a sales letter. And I wrote a sales letter and woke up the next morning with 7 sales. So right. That was a gusher, right? I mean, oil was just shooting out of the ground from the start. Other times it's like I'm curious about something and I see something that someone else is doing, and I have this intellectual curiosity to figure it out and deconstruct it. And so I try it and test it. So I had a site called Like Much, which was using the Viral Nova. If you guys remember back from 2013-ish, Viral Nova was the first site that was doing these clickbait headlines, which was like the 22 worst things you can put in your body. You won't believe what number 16 is, right? I saw him. So I followed the guy who built that site. His name's Scott DeLong. He had sold a couple of other sites and for millions, like Godvine and some of these other sites. And I was, I'm always trying to pay attention to who I think are smart marketers. And I saw him do this. And like 3 months after he started the site, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's brilliant. This is really, really smart what he's doing here. And I was like, could it be this easy? Right. And so I started a site called likemuch.com and started, had a team, and we started writing articles just like that. And within 3 months of me starting it, one of the articles went viral, and it was actually the 22 worst foods you could put in your body. You won't believe number 16. That article went viral and got picked up by Clear Channel, which owns all the radio stations in the country. And they were talking about this on the radio shows all morning for a whole week, 2 weeks. And it was linked, everyone was linked back to my site on all the radio stations. And it was crazy because how I found out that it had gone viral was I got an email from my hosting company saying they were going to shut me down. And I was like, what have I done now? And because I get those emails occasionally. And so I reached out to my webmaster, Clint, who is in the Philippines, and he looked it up. He's like, well, it's the Like Much site, sir. And I said, what's going on with it? And he said, well, we're getting so much traffic. And I said, okay, put analytics on it, because we were 3 months in. I thought it would take time for this to build up to something, right? And so he threw analytics on it, and we had 4,500 people on the site at that moment. And we had over 3 million people hit the site that month. And it was just literally an intellectual curiosity of mine. And the site, I had to figure out how to get ads on there and, all this sort of stuff to monetize it, which was phase 2 and 3. Yeah. But, so there's just this sort of, for me, because I have a lot of interests and I have time to actually pursue them. I just sort of stumble through it based on things that I find curious or interesting or what have you, and build these out. And it's not occasionally there's some process to it. Like I do it, in a methodical way, because I hit one, and like, to use your phrase, I turn an oil well into an oil field. But many times I just have these standalone oil wells
Just
because
one-offs.
I'm interested.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you've mentioned in another video that like the power of observation, and you called it becoming a noticer.
Yeah.
And
Good
it sounds
noticer.
like
Yeah.
that it sounds like that's kind of what you're talking about, is your, like a part of your daily life is reading, is kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of a variety of things as a polymath who has a lot of interests. And then so you're looking for overlap. Are you looking for, like, is it a feeling you get? Is it like, like, is it like you start to see the patterns, or is it literally just like a strike out of nowhere of like a new intuitive idea of like, well, I could test something like that? Like,
Yeah. So some of the things are, I know that they are maybe beyond my capabilities and my team's capabilities. And so for those, I sort of, just usually shy away. Um, so for instance, I love playing League of Legends with my son. Um, but most things in the esports realm, they've got like pretty big teams of smart people working full time with millions of dollars of venture backing and stuff like that. So I don't really like go down that rabbit hole too many times. There's a lot of things I'm interested in esports that I think could be giant businesses, but I don't know that you could do them as one-offs, right? But I have built games with my son using like these simpler softwares. So these simpler games like Meat Boy and some of those, we've played around with, and so to that point, if it's something that I feel like we can do, and it's not going to be like this monster project that I have to, bring on uh, if I don't have to turn it into a business and a company and all that stuff to build it, then I'll try it. But if it's something where it's like, okay, I'm going to have to invest $50,000 in this before I even see that it's got a chance, then I'm not wealthy enough to blow 50 grand on an idea like that, but I'll blow $5,000, right? So I think it's partly personal preference and personal comfort level of whatever. But yeah, so there's just like there, it's sort of like a random walk through the internet.
and it seems like one of the filters is ease of testing. How quick can I test this? How cheap would it be to test this? Where that overlaps with the interest. So while you were talking, I went to Etsy and just pulled up, I just typed in League of Legends on Etsy, right? Like what's selling, and there's a neon light, a hand bent neon light. So obviously that's probably somebody who makes neon lights. That's not necessarily something that you're going to go jump down and learn how to build. But there's print-on-demand T-shirts available. There's necklaces. There's keyboards. There's little 3D printed things for people who have 3D printers. There's masks, because that's currently a part of the meme of our culture at this point, and on and on and on. So what I like seeing in those examples that I just kind of glanced at, people are taking an interest, right? And then it's like, okay, well, what do I have? Like, I love 3D printing, or I'm a neon tube person, right? And it's like, it's overlaying these interests and finding that kind of Venn diagram where they overlap. And that's often a really powerful place to go digging, in my personal opinion, right? It's the best blank for blank, right? It's T-shirts for people who like this. It's keychains for car guys. It's keychains for guys who like rat rods, like somebody we can get super, super specific. The die cut vinyl stickers, right? Like there's places to get those things cut and done instantaneously, super cheap, super inexpensive to get the nice die cut stickers. And then there's places to list them for sale. And it's kind of looking at the overlap. I really like digging in on the research. I like trying to see what the algorithms like to push up to the top, because generally speaking, if you go in, so let's say you go on Gumroad and you just start flipping through by category, you're going to see they like Gumroad wants to sell you stuff because Gumroad makes money when you make a purchase. So looking at that, what rises to the top in the categories on Gumroad, on Udemy, if I'm into education stuff, on Amazon, on Etsy, on eBay, and you don't have to sell it there. It's just a quick way to put your finger on the pulse of a marketplace. I also look at what people are running ads to. And it's not always true that someone running ads is making money, but if you can find an ad that has been running for a long time, like in the Facebook ads library, you can see an ad that's been running since March of 2019. And as of now in 2021, if somebody's been running an ad and it's been on for 2 years, I would put a really healthy wager that that ad is pulling, that ad is working at some point inside of their funnel. On Etsy, if you type in a keyword phrase like League of Legends, the ads show up on top, and you can look at how many 5-star reviews they have. And if they have hundreds of 5-star reviews, you can click in and it'll show you right up top that 23,564 of these have sold. And you're like, wow, okay. So 23,000 sticker packs have sold for that. Now, am I going to go make those stickers and compete with that person? Like, never, right? So the way I like to do it is I like to take my little random overlapping circles of interest, the things that I'm kind of keen on, and then I try to look at what's working really, really well in other verticals, in other areas, and then I merge them together. And we've done, I think Jay Abraham is kind of the guy who I really kind of absorbed that idea from, because he took what his experiences were in the gold and silver industry and he moved them over to the biz op industry, and voila, things just absolutely crushed it. Because most people, they've got the blinders on. They see what's going on in their world, in their space, and that's all that they can see. And I really like kind of to reverse engineer what's working for other people in different spaces. And I feel like that's kind of one of the main reasons why my wife and I have been so successful, is we take what's just dominating over here in the supplement space, right? Like supplements on ClickFunnels, and they just have scaled it. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to do that. And I don't want to play on clickbait. I don't want anything to do with that marketplace or the product, but I'm going to go in here. What are they doing? Why is this working so well? And then from there, I kind of get these ideas like, you know what? They're actually selling something different, right? They're actually selling, okay. And I start to kind of see what I think is the psychological or the kind of emotional reason the thing is working. And then it's like, okay, well, where's my version of that? Where's my next, what can I do in my little world of the things I'm interested in that would replicate a bit of that? And so it's kind of like the data and the art, right? I mash it all up in my head, and I spend a lot of time. What are these folks doing over here? What's Kevin Hutto doing over there, right? When I first found you and your videos, and it's like, okay, well, what else is going on over here? And that rabbit hole, usually a synthesized idea comes out for me of like, ooh, I haven't really tried that. Okay, so if I took that over there and I put it over here, bingo. And that's where I like to try to come up with my high probability tests, I guess I would call it.
Yeah. And like the truth of it, in my view, is that this is like, when you're first starting out, it's harder because you don't have experience. And so you're going to, sometimes you're going to want to like sprinkle a little bit of oil on the ground and then find it yourself. You know what I mean? It's like you try to find, you'll find fool's gold, like, to mix metaphors, right? But like you try to see it in places where it maybe isn't at. But I think as you get experience and as you start to like find the little nuanced differences of things you see, then you will naturally start to walk through life like a treasure hunter.
Yeah.
That's how I like it. I mean, I walk through a store and I see something interesting and I'm like, oh, what's that? You know, like there's just a million little curiosities to me in the world. And, you know, rather than spend my time arguing about politics, I'd rather spend my time discovering new things and like
that
having
value.
Yeah. And having this sort of treasure hunt mindset and doing these things. And I like doing it with my kids. I like, there's just a lot of fun to be had with it, and to
Yeah.
see, like, can we make this work? To me, it's the ultimate game. Like
Yeah.
that, like you can play tic-tac-toe or chess or some online game. Or you could play like the ultimate business game where you get to sort of make these things that like I view them as like these little standalone little $200 a month, $500 a month, $1,000 a month little businesses that kick out. Like some people buy real estate like that, and I prefer to do it online. And
Yeah, I don't like the leverage either. I think it's great. So what I'm kind of really getting is back to that being a noticer and the power of observation and mixed with curiosity. One of my favorite things is to go to, I love going to farmers markets and I love seeing what people are creating and or repurposing and or buying from one place and selling at another place. And I've found bracelets that were for sale, copper magnet bracelets for ergonomics and for carpal tunnel. I found them at a farmer's market and went back and looked on Alibaba. And sure enough, that $30 bracelet was $3.95 on Alibaba. And somebody was buying shipments of these from China and selling them at their local thing they branded a little shop at their farmer's market as the ergonomic shop. And they were selling a bunch of stuff off Alibaba. And I was like, I bought it and I wasn't even mad. I was like, good on them. Like, that's brilliant. I love that. And it just, boom, that was the first experience I ever had. Cause I was like, where did they get this thing? That was my first experience. And then I was like, oh my gosh, there's this whole world, like buying and selling. Like, wow, this is amazing. And it goes deeper. So we're going to go into this.
It's funny
I think
you say that. I just bought my wife a copper bracelet on Etsy like this weekend because I have one. Okay. And I was like, she's like, oh, that, you brought back out the copper bracelet. She's like, I wish I had one of those that wasn't so ugly. And we went on Etsy and bought one for $30. So,
all right. So maybe glance at reverse image, check that one and see if it's there.
Maybe she can get in the copper bracelet business.
Dude, the whole ergonomics world. I mean, and we're about to, I think the next video, we're about to wrap this. And then on the next video is where to find the oil wells. And we'll go into from there some of the examples in our brainstorm session. The world of ergonomics. I mean, especially at home ergonomics is it's huge. It's incredible.
The one other thing I would say, if you're starting out and you're trying to like sort of go through this is, I'm pretty in touch with this at this point because I'm 50 years old and been doing this a long time. But, start to write down all the things that you know and that you have like deep knowledge in and things like that. And, like this Hustler Secret idea, it's just a little thing I knew from growing up playing golf with a guy who cheated all the time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you thought everyone knew that when you recommended it to him, right? You've told me that before. So you're like, hey man, here, and you just did it for him. And you're like, well, everybody knows that.
Well, actually, so he was playing bad. My house was on the fourth tee box. So I ran in to my daughter's nursery room, and grabbed a big old thing of Vaseline out of the crib and brought it out or out of the changing table and brought it out and just put it on his towel. We started playing. And at the end of the round, he's like, man, I would have paid years ago to know this and all this stuff. And I was like, man, I thought everybody knew this. Like, we just called it playing wet. And cause you would play, like, if everybody does it, then obviously there's no disadvantage. How I found out about it is there was a guy who used to do it and didn't tell everybody, and nobody knew about it. And then everybody knew about it, and so on and so forth. And so, but it was like this little secret knowledge I had from the time I was probably like 17, 18 years old, and just never thought about it. It was just a random thing.
And most people,
this has sold millions of dollars. Yeah. This has sold millions of dollars too.
Yep. And it was the realizing in that aha moment, observing that of like, wow, he didn't really get that. Well, I thought everybody knew this. He said he would pay. Well, bingo, test. Let's go to phase one. Let's like, will strangers purchase this thing from me from a website? Test up, test passed, bingo. Let's now build a system around this, and on and on and on it goes. And most people have those things in their life, whether it's competitive advantages in esports and video games, all the way to investing, paying off debt, credit repair. There's a million and one of these little things. And that's what we're going to help you with in the next videos is really where to look for these. And then Kevin and I are going to brainstorm one, because we're going to build one flat out with you. And you'll get to hear all of the ideas that we throw back and forth in a brainstorm session that we haven't snuck any ideas back and forth to each other. So it's going to be a big old honking surprise for Kevin,
good.
myself, and everyone. It's going to be really good. On that note, I think this has been great, Kevin. Thanks for your time today, my man. And we'll pass this on, and I'll see you, Mr. Viewer or Mrs. Viewer. We'll see you on the next one, where we're going to talk about where to find the oil wells, because they are all around you. You just got to know where to look. So until we meet again on that video, thanks for joining.